I'm going to go ahead and get us started since this is being recorded. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Roses Conference Poster Design webinar. I'm Tammy Bravo. I'm a seismology outreach specialist at IRIS. As I mentioned, this webinar is being recorded and it will be archived on the Roses website. If you have a comment or question as the webinar unfolds, please type it into the question and answer box on the webinar control panel. If the webinar crashes due to Zoom or internet issues, I will reboot it. Just please click on the webinar link again to get back in. And today's webinar will be presented by Madelyn Sita, and I will hand over the microphone for her to introduce herself.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So my name is Madelyn Sita. I just recently finished my undergraduate degree at the University of Virginia, and during that time I had the awesome opportunity to work with Susan Vanderlee, who's one of the co-organizer of the whole Roses lecture, and she presented me with this opportunity to give kind of a poster design webinar because it's something that I'm really passionate about. And so let's get started. All right, so what I wanted to start with is I'm going to show you guys a quick video that's kind of, it started the whole trend of kind of how can we make poster presentations better at communicating our science. And so this guy created a great little video that I think highlights a lot of really important points, and I'll pull those points in later and we'll talk about them. But yeah, so we'll start with the video on how to create a better research poster in less time, which is another key thing for a lot of grad students.
So what should an academic poster look like? I think an ideal academic poster should accomplish 3 goals. First, we want to maximize the amount of insight transferred to attendees in the poster session. If you're attending a poster session, we want to make it easy for you to interact with every poster in some way, so that you could conceivably learn the insight that every single poster in the session has to offer in less than 50 minutes. Second, we want to keep the good stuff. We still want to leave time for having good conversations and getting deep insight about any single poster if you want to. And third, we have to accomplish these goals in a way that is as lazy or lazier for grad students and scientists to create posters with the new design under time pressure and with no free mental bandwidth. Even if this new approach to designing posters cures cancer faster, if it's not easier for scientists to create than what they're currently doing, it'll never happen. So we have to make it easy so that it's both the right way to do it and the fast way to do it. So let's get started. Okay, so let's get into the right frame of mind here. We're going to start things off with one of the most famous quotes in all of design. Here it goes. Perfection is not when you have nothing to add. It's when you have nothing to take away. Good designs start with something very, very minimal, like a core thing, and they work from there. So that's what we're going to do. And for that core thing, we're going to follow the biggest, most reliable rule in all of usability research. You put a lot of effort into what people need to know, and then you include the stuff that's nice to know last. Punchline first. So here's a blank academic poster. What is the minimum need to know piece of information that should go on here if we could only put one thing on it? Well, that's probably like the main finding of the study, right? So we need a finding. I'm going to use a real finding from my friend Jacob's study. Jacob very bravely sent me his poster and let me use it for the video. Thank you, Jacob. And you probably can't tell from this poster, but Jacob's study is actually really cool and important. But that coolness and that importance is lost in this traditional academic poster format. So we're going to take this and we're going to redesign it. And we're going to start by grabbing the main finding, the core takeaway of this study, and putting it on our blank poster. So let's see, what's the main finding of this study? What's the main finding? See, this is the problem I'm talking about. It's taken me way too damn long to find the main takeaway from this study, which is pretty representative of the problem here. And that has nothing to do with this poster. Every poster in science is like this. Okay, so after reading this entire poster, I think the main finding is this bit right here. We found consistent differential validity for some non-cognitive measures for predicting international student GPA, specifically with SJTs, continuous learning, social responsibility, and perseverance. So let's put that on the poster. And then we're going to change the background color. You can use your school's color if you want to, but I think it would be extra efficient to use colors that prime people's expectations about what type of poster they're about to see, because they'll notice the color first. Like we could use green for empirical studies because they're the most common, blue for theory, red for methods, and yellow, the most attention-getting color, for that rare and wonderful intervention study. So this is already better, but it sounds kind of technical to anybody who doesn't specialize in the subfield that this relates to, which is selection or hiring decisions, which is fine for an academic paper where people can go back and look up terms they don't know. But we don't have that kind of time. People are walking by in 5 seconds. We got to punch it in their brain. And research on usability writing shows that plain language is interpreted faster and gets people's attention better. So the most efficient thing we can put on this poster is actually a plain language version of our main finding. So we're going to say, For international students, perseverance and a sense of social responsibility are extra important for predicting first-year GPA. Now, this kind of makes sense, right? Now you're getting this whole story popping into your mind. But what if we're presenting a poster and somebody comes up and asks us a question we don't know the answer to, like give me your full list of predictors and all the correlations? What about those figures and tables that give us that sense of safety and the ability to answer questions? Well, for that, we're going to add something called an ammo bar. Ammo bar is just going to be a column on the right side, or whatever side you plan to stand on. And you're going to copy and paste all of your miscellaneous figures and tables and stuff that you need for answering questions into that bar. You're not going to spend any time worrying about the design or layout of the section because it's just for you to use. Treat it as your scratch board. Make it as ugly and as fast as you can. It's just there so you can point to things when somebody walks up and talks to you. Now, what if you're already talking to somebody and you're showing them things in your ammo bar and somebody else walks up and wants to learn more about your study, but doesn't want to interrupt you? Well, for them, we're going to add a sidebar on the left. We're going to call this our silent presenter bar. In the silent presenter bar, you're going to do all the stuff you normally do on an academic poster, but you're going to worry about the layout of it a little less. Go ahead and follow the old intro methods results format. Copy and paste bits of your essay or add bullets and graphs if you have time. Just sort of give people an overview of the paper as if they were going to be standing there and reading it silently, but in 1 to 4 minutes, not 10 to 15. These sidebars are key to this design because with the ammo bar and the silent presenter bar together, we really have almost as much information on this new design as we had on the traditional design. It's just arranged much more efficiently. But what if somebody wants a lot more information, a lot more than you can even put on your poster, and doesn't have time to read it or talk to you? These are the people that sometimes like snap pictures of your poster. Well, for these people, we're going to add a QR code that links to your full paper and a copy of the poster. These QR codes look scary, but they are stupidly easy to create. Just Google create a QR code. You'll do it in a second. And every phone can read them. Like if you take out your phone right now and take a picture of this QR code on the screen, it'll automatically know it's taking a picture of a QR code and follow the link. So this last QR code feature lets you snap a picture of any poster and instantly get a copy of the whole poster and the paper. So now with this QR code option, we're actually providing an option to get even more information than traditional designs allow for, and doing it in a way that lets attendees choose how much information they want to get instead of being flooded. In design, this is called the principle of progressive disclosure. So here's our final design. Now there are more things we could do with this. Like if you have a really important graph or an image that needs to go in the center, you could move the QR code over. It only needs to be about 5 inches big to be read. You could also add your own creative flair with images and stuff. But for now, let's look at the design in its simplest form. Let's look at a before and after. So in the next screen, a few real academic posters are going to move past you at a walking pace. See how much information you can absorb. Now try these same posters you just saw translated to the new design. Now this is going to be a little unbelievable and jarring at first because when people see this, they don't believe that these clear findings came from the posters they just saw, but they did. This is how detached current scientific poster design is from actually communicating what you need to know. Here we go. You absorbed more, right? You got the gist of probably every poster. If you wanted to know more, you could still walk up and talk or read the silent presenter bar or just scan the QR code and keep walking. So this new design meets our goals. It helps transfer insight more efficiently by leading with the main finding and making it big and obvious and in plain language. You can still walk up and have good conversations with people. And for our third goal, and I hope you can tell from looking at it, but this approach is way easier for grad students to create. You can create this poster design in much less time than you're spending on your current.
Right. So in that video, the main thing that we noticed is that he wanted to create a design that would allow you to convey your final, your research conclusion a little bit easier to a viewer in a poster session. So my favorite part about that is when he walks you through the posters at a walking speed, which is how most people would attend a poster session. And really, you have to get up close and personal with those posters and the presenters in the old format to really understand anything. And he's right, it takes you about 10 minutes, 15 minutes, unless the presenter is really aware and points you right to their finding to kind of get anything out of that poster. Versus with this new poster design, you're able to consume that information a little bit easier and without necessarily, with being able to choose how much you want to interact with that poster. So very quickly, you're able to tell, this is relevant to my research, this is relevant to my area of study, so I want to go interact more. or just kidding, that one is not as relevant to my research as I thought, so I'm going to keep moving on. So we're going to pull a lot of those concepts in, but I also have a couple tips and tricks to how to make that ammo bar and the silent presenter bar a little bit more, a little bit closer to what we're used to seeing in regular poster presentations, because I know it's a little jarring to jump from your classic poster presentation, your classic poster to kind of this new method. So I'll talk about how to find a happy medium where it's something that you're comfortable with, but it also is able to convey your research a lot easier.
So what should an academic?
Okay, so again, one of the big things to remember about design is you put a lot of effort into what people need to know. So those are the things that are really big. Those are the things that are eye-catching. Those are the things that you put a lot of effort in to make look presentable. And then you include the stuff that's nice to know last. So you include that for yourself, you include that for the people that are really interested, but it doesn't necessarily need to be as eye-catching. So now we're going to walk through the steps to creating this poster. So my first step, and one that I suggest everybody start with, is I want you to think about the story that you're trying to tell with that poster. So what is the story you're trying to convey to the audience? What is that research story that you're trying to convey? What is that need to know necessarily? So the key thing to remember about poster presentations is there's supposed to be a visual representation of that story that's leading to enhance your verbal presentation or your little spiel that you give during the poster presentation. So the poster has to be able to stand alone though, but you need to be able to convey all the key points in the poster, but then also it needs to be able to enhance that verbal presentation. So you need to use all those visual aids that you've included in your poster during that verbal presentation. So there's kind of a give and take with both sides, but it's really important to have a very clear story going in. And so the first thing you need to ask yourself when you're creating that story is, what do you want the key takeaways from your presentation to be? What do you want those people that come and interact with your poster, what do you want them to know when they walk away? So there should be, ideally to keep from overcrowding, about 3 to 4 points that you're trying to make. So you want to make that big conclusion about what your research findings are, and you can include a couple of different things with that. Like maybe you found a couple of different interesting conclusions, or you want to include something from your methods that you guys found worked really, really well for you that you want to convey to an audience. Or maybe you want to highlight something really weird that you found, and you want to be able to start that conversation with people that are interested in your topic. So that's something that you can include and highlight, just to make sure that both the viewer and you are getting something out of this poster presentation. So you're inciting some conversation by including maybe some of the things that you have questions, for other people in the field. So then once you've got that kind of story, those key points that you want to talk about, think about what visual components you need to provide context and importance to your story. So like, what do you need to tell that story in a visual manner? Are there specific figures that you think are really awesome that were included in your article that you think really show what your data is trying to convey? Are there any tables that you think are really important? Are there diagrams that can help tell you, tell the viewer something that is really difficult to put into words? So trying to describe a seismometer to somebody that doesn't know anything about seismology, is it helpful to include a diagram, or do you think you have a concise way of doing it in words? That's where a diagram can be helpful in situations like that. So that's also where it's important to know your audience. What does your audience need to know in terms of background information and anything like that in order to understand your research? So that's something that's also really important to include. And then lastly, are there certain parts of your procedures or are there equations that are really important to your research that you think need to be shown in kind of a more visual format? So I want you to collect all of those things really together and keep them in the back of your mind as we go through the next steps. So you need to know your story before you can really begin designing this poster. So the next step that I always do is I take all of that information that we collected in step 1, and I go on the internet and go and look for inspiration. Mainly because nobody, not even professionals, have the time or patience to do absolutely everything from scratch. They're normally pulling from bits and pieces of inspiration, and I go straight to Google. So by Googling just scientific poster presentation. I get a bunch of awesome, results. They're normally the classic poster type, but you can pull different elements from different things. So for this, I just Googled for this one here when looking at shark incidents along the Gulf Coast, right? I just Googled scientific poster presentation, and something like this came up. And so I pulled this for inspiration because I really loved how the map was used as a type of background and as a way of telling a story. It was a really interesting way of presenting information. So I really liked that. So I just copied and pasted it into a little inspiration. I normally make all of my things in PowerPoint. So I'll have an entire slide that's just copied and pasted inspiration. And then on the second slide, I'll start working on my actual poster. So I just copy and paste that into the inspiration, and I can pull stuff from it later or not use it. It doesn't really matter. And then for this one, I just Googled scientific infographic. And I really loved about this one was how there was the single color bar on the one side, and then there were those 3 sections here that had a different color background with these really awesome headers. So I liked that. Copied and pasted it, kept going. So this one, I really loved how it was the 3-column design, and it had a banner that stretched across the whole thing, and I loved these headers. So basically, I'm just pulling bits and pieces from every piece of information or inspiration, but you don't need to copy all of it. That's the thing, is we want your creativity to come out. So just pull the bits and pieces that you like and see what you can make out of it. This one I thought was really cool because of the really interesting layout of all of the boxes. So it's basically your standard poster. However, they got creative with a lot of these box sizes. Again, that's really cool. You have to think about what kind of patience you have and how much time you have if you want to do something like that, because that will take you a second. But it's something really awesome to consider if you have some sort of shape or you have a central component that you think can be shown visually this way. That's something really cool to consider. And the last piece of inspiration I found was actually just Googling design poster information, and it came up with this one. So this has a great tips. But then also I really loved these headers here. And I love the way the text boxes look. So basically, if I pull all of that inspiration, we're now going to go into drafting the poster. So you've got all of your key points. You've got all the things that you want to put on your poster, mostly in one place or in your mind. You've got some inspiration to pull from. And now we're going to go into just drafting it. We're going to do kind of a basic drafting process at the beginning. Don't get too crazy. You want to make sure that your text fits, but then also if your text doesn't fit, you got to ask yourself, how much text do I really need? And so there's a bunch of different things that happen later on in the process. So we're going to start out with just looking at kind of the bare minimum of what your poster design drafting process should look like. So we want you to start simple, bring in your inspiration, and kind of let your creativity fly, which is something that I was talking about. As a reminder, when you are starting to draft your poster, you need to check the conference that you're attending, their poster requirements, specifically the measurement requirements. You don't want to get down to it, create your entire poster, and then suddenly discover, oh no, my poster is 2 sizes too big. Because scaling down things on any sort of format it's not going to go well at the end. And you're going to get really frustrated, and nobody wants that. So make sure you check at the beginning. And the really awesome thing is that PowerPoint, which is what I use for everything, it's really good about if you want to change the dimensions of the slides, you can actually make it 45 inches by 60 inches. You can make it poster length, and then you don't have to readjust anything later. And you can actually look at what all of your things look like in proper sizes, and proper relative sizes, I guess, because obviously your computer screen isn't 60 inches. But it helps with the visualization process if you can start at your 40 by 60 inches posters. So I'm going to walk you through how I would pull this inspiration into kind of a basic design. If anybody has any questions, please let me know. But this is kind of my process, and I'm going to share some tips that I use and that I've learned along the way. So first, we're going to start with this piece of inspiration that I showed you guys earlier. I said that I really loved the kind of 3-column structure, and I loved that this header bar reached across 2 of those columns. Basic thing that I want to pull. Let's try and recreate it. So here is kind of the basic design that I came up with. So you've got your main finding here, which is that big centerpiece that you want to convey your final conclusion. It could be a figure if you wanted, but text is normally the easiest to digest in a quick time. So normally includes some sort of main finding in text and a figure if you really wanted, if the data is what you really want to show. I've left sections for background information, methods, and a discussion section, as well as results. So I kind of copied that like 2 different background color idea, and then make sure that when you're planning for it, you kind of leave a section for your citations, your acknowledgements, and that QR code. You don't want to get down to it, find out all your text fits, and then have to be shoving citations or your acknowledgements or anything that's required based on your funding into the bottom of that poster. So make sure you leave kind of a section for it. It can be adjusted later depending on how much you need, but make sure you think of all the components that are going into it when you're drafting so that you don't get down to the wire and realize you're missing a bunch of stuff. So this is kind of just the basic thing. So a question that a lot of people now have is, where is that ammo and the silent presenter bar in this kind of thing? So this is where we find the happy medium. So we've got our ammo bar is something that I'm going to put kind of in the results section. That's normally where you have all those technical results where you're presenting the data. That's for the people that are going to come up and ask you very specific questions if they're from that field. That's where you'll refer to as your, like, when you're giving your verbal presentation to somebody who's asking questions. So there, your ammo bar can kind of fit within a results section, and it doesn't need to be all text-based. That's something really important about the results, is normally the numbers can speak for themselves, and you can give them kind of a quick overview in your verbal, or you can give them a caption, but that's kind of your ammo bar is down there in the results section. And then your silent presenter bar can be spread out across multiple places, and those can have your bullet points and maybe more figures and images that can help tell the story when you're maybe discussing with somebody about the ammo bar. So you can spread them out however you want. He had them very rigidly in the 2 columns, and they weren't very cohesively designed. And so this is kind of that happy medium where they're a part of the poster, but they also still serve those purposes. So now we're going to pull in the inspiration from the other 2 pieces that I showed. So I mentioned that I really loved these headers. And then I mentioned that I really loved the way that this map kind of blended into the background and created a very interesting way of telling information. So I'm going to show you how I pulled those inspiration now into that basic design that I created. So the really important thing is those headers have now changed. So they're a little bit more like headers. And they separate each of the sections very distinctly, which is something that's really important. And then I pulled in that map. So we're seismologists, we use maps sometimes. This is maybe a way that you could present it if you had specifically something that you needed to show on a map. It's something exciting, and it's a way to bring color to your poster. So just think about that when you're doing your research, is how can I show a lot of the stuff that I'm writing in text visually? So yeah, this is the new draft of the poster. So with that now draft, I want to go on and kind of decide a theme. So this is where it gets exciting with colors and fonts. I'm going to try and give you guys as many tips and as many tools that I can to kind of help make that more digestible, because I know sometimes maybe it gets a little, if you're new to design and don't have any experience, it gets a little intimidating trying to pick a color scheme, and it's sometimes really simple just to stick with black and white. But color can actually be a really awesome communication tool, and so can fonts. So I would like to give you guys some tips and tools to use them in your own poster presentations to make it more of an effective communication tool. So here's our design choice roadmap that we're going to walk through first. So first, I'm going to show you guys how to decide a color palette. Next, we're going to talk about the importance of using a highlight color and how to use it. Then we're going to go on to talking about font choices. So what to use in a title versus a body text, and kind of how those can go together. And there's a way that fonts look really nice together, and there's kind of a little trick that I can tell you there. Then we're going to move on to talking about, once you've got all those pieces of your theme, creating a visual hierarchy on your poster that'll draw the eye to all the important things, and then it'll slowly wind its way down to those like nice to know things last. So the need to know things will be kind of the main point of this visual hierarchy, and then it'll work its way down. Talk about the possibility of kind of using a thematic graphic. We can talk about that. And then also, one of the major things to making your poster look a lot more professional is your element spacing and the use of negative space. So we're going to talk about all these in more detail as we go through. You can kind of do them in any order you like. I presented them in this order because this is the way that I would do it, but you don't necessarily have to walk through in these steps if you don't want to, but you should get to all 6 of these points as you're going through your poster presentation design. So we're going to start with deciding on a color palette. So the main thing to remember when you're deciding a color palette is you should stick to about 4 to 5 colors. That's normally these 2 links that I've included on the bottom. They create palettes for you of about 5 colors, and that's kind of the limit that most designers would draw to how many colors before it gets too confusing and hard to read. And so 5 colors is about the maximum that most people will use, plus maybe a highlight color or 2. So those 5 colors should all be what are called complementary colors. And so the fun thing about complementary colors is there's actually a scientific reason why these colors look very pleasing together. And basically most is like, you should just trust that. So we'll show you an example later where I'm using complementary colors. Oh no, I don't have that example anymore. I'm so sorry. I'll show you in the website kind of what the difference is between a random collection of colors that you think look good together versus complementary colors. And we'll talk about one is more pleasing than the other. And it's just kind of a human thing that happens when you're looking at colors. Another tip that I have is to use more neutral shades. So I'll show you an example of that, where if you're using the bright and the rich color versions of, say, green or purple, they come out a little bit more jarring, and they make the poster very loud and very hard to digest. And they oftentimes are really difficult to use text with. So text in those loud colors on top of each other sometimes is really difficult to read. So we want to kind of use the more neutral shades, tone them down just a little bit. So you can still have fun colors, but they should not be as bright. And then the third thing that we're going to talk about is, I'm going to show you on these websites how to consider this, but accessibility is a big thing. So your poster is supposed to be communicating your science effectively. So you have to consider how accessible is it, not just how pretty it is. So we're going to talk about on these websites, looking at the contrast of color on the text versus the background. So you need to have enough contrast between the two that you can read the text on the background. And then also we're going to check, there's a really awesome tool on this Adobe color wheel that allows you to check if the colors are colorblind safe. So that's just being inclusive to everybody, making sure everybody is seeing your poster kind of in a similar fashion. So let's see if I can, I'm going to have to ask if somebody can see this. So this is the color, the Adobe, can you guys all, if somebody can answer me?
Yeah, that's great.
Okay, awesome. So this is the Adobe color wheel website. So I'm going to show you guys. So these are complementary colors, right? And so these are the bright versions of the colors. Now, if you imagine these on a poster, they're really, really bright and loud. And that's really difficult to see. If I show you guys this accessibility tool up here, if you try and use the red and green on top of this, is a really awesome contrast checker. So it'll actually like tell you if most people can read it or not. So this is really, really difficult to read. It fails on all points. And those are the bright versions of the colors. So now let's try kind of neutralizing them a little bit, toning them down. So all you do to do that is kind of move it closer to the center, which just adds more, oh, this isn't the custom, my apologies. If you move it closer to the center, it adds more white to the colors basically. And so now you've got a little bit more of a neutral palette, and let's check what the contrast checker now says. The red and green probably still isn't going to work really well, but it might work a little bit better now. So they still all fail, but what if we make, all right, well, red and green, those were just my trial colors. We found out they don't really work well together, but you get the point about how these are, oh goodness, all right, these are really jarring colors to look at versus if you mute them down just a little bit, they can be used as the background, and you can use black or white text on top if you wanted. So this is a really awesome tool. I normally use the split complementary thing here. You can also just use complementary. And so you can see here it comes in that scientific reasoning why complementary colors are more pleasing. They're on opposite sides of the color palette. So they actually use different, the low and high frequency when your eyes are reading them is actually just a little bit more easy to process, I believe. You can look up that if you're really, really interested. It's interesting stuff. You could make a poster about it. Yeah, so the other thing that I use is in this accessibility tools. So it's really awesome to check the contrast. That's really important for legibility, but then also there's a colorblind safe tool. And so this one is telling me that if I use these complementary colors, the green and the red are really difficult to see in this situation for this person, like somebody with this type of color blindness. So you can go in and let's see if we can change it to make it a little bit more colorblind safe. Don't worry too much about moving things around ridiculous amounts. When I say complementary colors, it's basically just in a general area across from each other. So these are still a really good color palette, even though you've moved things around, it's just now colorblind safe. So don't be afraid to like mess around a little bit. Don't get too crazy in the custom, but these colors still look good together and you can still use them as a color palette. So yeah, this is one of my favorite tools. You could spend hours there. The other awesome thing that it has is if you have a figure that you've already created a color scheme for that you want to include in your poster and you want to just pull those colors, you can actually import the file to this website and it'll give you these what are called hex codes that identify the colors, and it'll create a theme for you around that figure. So that's something that's really awesome. If you don't want to spend a bunch of time coming up with your own color scheme, you can use one that's already created for you in an image or a diagram or a figure that you already have. So that's a really useful tool. The same goes for the other website that I show here. It's just another really awesome tool. It very specifically has creating websites in mind. So if you scroll down, it'll show you examples of using those colors in a website layout. So that can be something that's helpful, just looking at how people would use those colors in a professional setting. So now, once we've got our color palette, we can move on to deciding on kind of a highlight color. So I bring back the kind of draft poster design that I have here, but now I've included the highlight color. So I copied what he did in the video, where in your main finding, you can use bold and color to kind of bring your eyes to very specific parts of it. So if you were doing, my research work has been in Marsquakes. So very specifically, I want to highlight the word Marsquakes. This is really exciting. And we were able to find double couple solutions for these Marsquakes. So I wanted to highlight double couple solutions and Marsquakes in that kind of finding, because then on quick pass, people are going to be drawn to that color and people are going to be drawn to that bold, and already it's the biggest thing on the poster. So then very quickly they can get a sense of what my poster is about. So using highlight color is really important. It should still be a complementary color, but this is where you can use that brighter version. My tip to you is to avoid neons. They don't normally print very well and they don't work. but you can use that brighter version of, say, a green or a blue. And you want to use it very sparingly. So see how I pulled it from this figure, but it can be used sparingly in all the little text boxes to bring a highlight to a very specific part that you want a quick passerby to be able to see very quickly. My big recommendation is to either pull it from a diagram or a figure that's already included, or try and include it. So I've included some tools at the end to kind of, if you use Matplotlib to, or most figure creators probably have some sort of setting, but I use Matplotlib. And so I've included my kind of tool that I use to walk through how to change all the visuals in Matplotlib. And so I would highly suggest, if you don't pull that color from a diagram, that you include it somewhere in the diagram, because it just helps with the cohesiveness of your poster. So yeah, highlight colors could still be complementary. You could pull it from those 5 color bars if you wanted, but you don't have to. You can choose just another complementary color on top of your 5. So the third thing on the kind of poster design roadmap is I want to talk about what are called font families, or your font pairings. So one really awesome thing that is a really quick tip to make your design look a little bit more professional is to use a little bit of variation. So what you want to check is both the bold version and the normal version. So the weights of the font that you choose, make sure that both are legible, make sure you like both of them, because using some variation in bolds versus normal weights is really helpful. And then there's another thing called a serif and a sans serif font. So those are just really fancy terms for basically a serif font has these little feet that you can see. And then a sans serif is without the little feet. So this Helvetica is a sans serif, Source Sans Pro and Century Gothic are all sans serif, versus Garamond, Playfair Display, and PT Serif are all serif fonts. So they've all got the little feet. So a really awesome font pairing has both a sans serif and a serif. But as you can see, they can be either the main font or the body font, whichever one you want. So you want to decide on something that's going to be used as all of your headers and your titles and things like that. That'll be your kind of main font that you want. And then your body text should be something that's really legible, definitely maybe a little less fun and creative. So Century Gothic is a little bit hard to read in massive blocks of text. So that can be a really awesome header because it's really wide, it's really big, it's got a lot of space in it that draws your eye in. So Century Gothic is a really awesome header. And then PT Serif is a great thing to pair with it because it looks really good in block text or like in paragraphs. So when choosing your font, the big thing that you need to consider is the accessibility of that font. So look at it not just in the little font bar as to how the font comes across saying its name, look at it actually with a sentence and see how legible that sentence is. So that's something that's really important. Don't get attached to a font and then find out that when you write out a whole paragraph with it, it's really, really difficult to read. So you need to check the legibility of it as kind of a paragraph body text, and then also the legibility as a header if you need to. But so these are some really classic pairings. I've included another example. This is a website that shows kind of the big font pairings of 2022. So if a lot of you guys are going to AGU, this is an awesome place to try them out because they're the big fonts of the year. They don't always pair a serif with a sans serif. So you just have to kind of make sure that it's legible for the purpose that you need it. And then also this Font Joy website is just a random generator of really awesome font pairings. And I believe you can also download the fonts from there. So that gets a little complicated. Obviously, these were just in my PowerPoint in like the basic package. So these are some really awesome ones to just start with. So the next point of our poster design kind of roadmap is we're going to talk about what is visual hierarchy. So this was something he kind of touched on in the video, but he didn't explain exactly. So what visual hierarchy is where your eyes are going to be kind of, when you're a casual viewer, where your eyes going to be drawn first, and then how do they navigate the rest of the poster kind of on their own. So your eyes are going to be drawn to a specific part, and then they're going to travel on their own, either based on the way that you just naturally read text. So a lot of English speakers will immediately go top to bottom, left to right. Or if you can mess with the visual hierarchy, you can get them to do something else just by changing the sizing of the elements on your poster. So that's something to really consider. You want the biggest and the most eye-catching and the most important things to all be the same thing. So that's where he's talking about this main finding should be big, it should be center, it should be, you can use color, you can use bold, to kind of anything you can to draw the eyes to that thing. And so in this draft poster, I kind of gave recommendations on what kind of font size you should be using. You have to make sure that it's legible on a poster, which is always the most difficult part because you're looking at it on a computer screen. So these are guidelines. You really should not be going below 16, maybe 18 point font if it's even if it's really unimportant text. You can go as low as like 10 or 12 for like citations and things that people don't really need to read, but they need to be on your poster for, you know, copyright or acknowledgement or grant reasons. But yeah, you really shouldn't be going below 16. So those are my recommendations, are shown on the poster. But in terms of visual hierarchy, what we want to talk about is there should be clear kind of movement through the text. So you should start in your main finding, and then you want to go to a header. So those should be the next, that should be the next kind of size down. And then you want to go to the body text. So that should be the next size down. And then say, and then you're going to move through it however you want. And then the next important thing should be the image caption. So it's like, it's kind of a natural thing. If you were to just pull up your poster, where do your eyes go first? Is it the most important? Where do your eyes go next? Is that where you want the viewer to go next? And if not, can I add some bold, or can I add some color, or can I make this text bigger to make that the natural progression? So that's something that you can do by yourself, is just take your poster off the screen, bring it back on. Where do my eyes go first? Where do they go next? Is this what I want the viewer's experience to be? And then you can bring in color, bold, again, the sizing, to kind of change that viewer experience to tell the story that you want to tell. The fifth stop is something that is optional, but helps your poster look a little bit more professional. It's something that I called kind of a thematic design element. So with this draft poster here, that thematic design element was these headers. So these headers are consistent across all of the text sections. They have some sort of design to them. So they could either be like this, they could be their own color inside the box, like that other piece of inspiration that I pulled. It could be really anything. But just keep it consistent. And that's something really simple that you can add that makes it look a little bit more professional and less thrown together. Even if it is thrown together, it looks less thrown together when you put that little bit of effort into creating that one design element that you keep consistent throughout. Another thing that you could pull in is, say you use a specific shape in a diagram, keep that consistent and use that as a bullet point, use that as the bullet point design. Or if you wanted to, you know, just add flourishes, you could pull that same shape to like add designs in spaces that are empty if you really wanted. So they help to look at more cohesive and professional if you have that one design element that is consistent throughout the whole poster. So there are the examples that I showed you. You've got this one. and the triangle if you wanted to pull in. And then another thing, if you'll notice, is I pulled that kind of pinpoint symbol from the roadmap design at the beginning, and I've been using that throughout the post, like throughout this little section of the presentation. So that makes this section feel a little bit more cohesive by pulling that same thematic element. It's something really small. It's something that you tend to not notice unless it's done wrong. It's something that's just really pleasing to see. So something really simple is a great place to start, like these headers. But it's something that definitely helps your poster look a little bit more presentable, or professional, not presentable. So the last thing I really wanted to talk about is something that is really, really important for making your poster look professional, is once you've got all of your kind of big boxes and your big things on the poster, is start looking at how you want to space these elements and make sure that they're aligned consistently. So, ooh, I forgot that I can't click on this picture. So the really awesome thing is that PowerPoint and a lot of things that you'd probably be using to create your poster has a little bit of a trick. So when you click on an element, it'll pop up these little guidelines. And so you want the spacing to be consistent and you want it to be centered. So follow the little guidelines. If it's snapping your boxes to a certain spot, it normally is trying to snap it to be in line with other pieces of text. And that's something that is really, really important in keeping your poster professional. So I always recommend kind of keeping that spacing consistent horizontally and then also vertically. So if you look, I've kind of got the 3 columns. The 3 columns are spaced the same. And then vertically, you guys can't exactly see it, but these guys are spaced also relatively the same. So you want to keep it consistent horizontally and vertically, and all your elements to be kind of consistently spaced. The other thing is to kind of prevent overcrowding, make sure that there actually is space. So it's something that's called negative space. And you want it to actually exist on your poster because it gives it a little bit of breathing room. It gives the viewer breathing room. It also helps you from not shoving as much text as you can and clouding the overall takeaways out of the poster. So make sure that you include negative space. That's the biggest tip to making a poster look professional really easily. It's actually much easier for you because you don't have to put anything there. So just be cognizant of what negative space is and that it's a really helpful design tool. Yeah, so the last thing I'm going to walk through a couple of tips and tricks. We're kind of just going to review the ones that I gave throughout the presentation to make it look more professional. Excuse me. So the first thing is you want to minimize text. We talked about that very early on. You should limit your key points, and that'll help you bring down your text such that you're not shoving entire paragraphs of your paper onto your poster. You want to keep it short, use bullet points, maybe 1 to 2 sentence short paragraphs. The other really helpful thing is in titles and in your main finding kind of section, and just in general, is limit your jargon and your technical terms as much as possible. So even if you are presenting to people within your field, jargon, no matter how well you know it and no matter how long you've been in that field, is still really difficult to digest very quickly. So it makes that poster a little bit less effective in the time that you have if you include a lot of technical terms. Second, keep it to 4 to 5 colors. You can maybe include a 6th with a highlight color if you really want to, but 4 to 5 colors helps make it look professional, as it doesn't get kind of crazy and you don't make accidental purposes out of the colors, because the brain wants to give purpose to the color. And if you accidentally match things because you have too many colors, it kind of gets confusing. So keep it simple, 4 to 5. The third thing, and really important for making it look professional, is keeping that consistent spacing that I talked about. Basically, nothing is more unprofessional than kind of crazy spacing that's all out of whack. It makes it kind of look like you didn't put the time into it, even if you did. Just keep it consistent, and it doesn't have to be perfect. Nobody's going to come in with a ruler and be like, oh my gosh, these don't line up. But the eye notices it if it's generally in line, and it'll make it easier for people to kind of digest your poster, and it'll look a lot more professional. Fourth, try and avoid word art, drop shadows, basically anything that would have been included on your high school science fair poster board, anything like that. It's not super professional anymore, just as the way that the designs are more professional, designs are moving more minimalist. So kind of all of that should be avoided. Even if you think it looks fun, it's a little bit difficult to communicate in a professional setting. The last tip that I have is use those labels, headers, and captions. Do not just put sections of text without headers or without titles or without that visual hierarchy step that'll walk you through from the title to the subhead to the body text, or from the main finding to the section to the body text, or just use that hierarchy and use those labels and headers to kind of help guide your reader through your story. It also helps to create sections within your poster to, again, give that reader breathing room as it moves through. They're like, okay, now we know we're moving from this section to this section, and there's kind of a change in topic there. So they're prepared for that change in topic. So yeah, really quickly, unless anybody has any questions, I have a really quick kind of example couple that I want to show you examples of using my tips the right way and then using them in a way that kind of doesn't help your communication skills. I don't see any questions in the Q&A, so I'm just going to use kind of the last couple minutes that we have to walk through these examples. But I am going to be available on Slack basically for the rest of the remainder of the lecture series for anybody to ask any questions or anybody in the recording when they have questions. So we're going to walk through these examples really quickly. So on the left is my poster draft, and on the right is a different version of the poster draft where I tried to bring in more colors. So it got really exciting. I wanted to use some blues and some purples. The difficulty here, though, is that by bringing in all these colors and trying to keep them consistent, I accidentally kind of matched up these data points with these sections, even though they don't necessarily match. So that's the difficulty with using too many colors. If you keep it consistent, the brain isn't automatically going to pair them off and group them. And while it's exciting to make them more colorful, it kind of makes you run out of colors to bring your attention to the more important things. So when you look at this one, you notice the colors first, and you don't necessarily notice this main finding, even though it's bigger, just because these colors are unique and they're special and they're more exciting. So your brain goes to the colors probably before it goes to the main finding. So that's not exactly what you want to do when you use colors, which is why we kind of limit it to 4 to 5, and they should not be used kind of as decorations, I guess, is the way that they're being used here. Oh no. Well, the next example I was going to show, which you can kind of see, is, so these are the muted versions where I kind of dulled down the colors, and then these are the bright versions of those same colors. As I said, the neon's a little bit more jarring. The text is kind of difficult to see, which you can't really see behind my red thing, so I apologize. But the text is kind of hard to see on top of it. So just, if you mute them down a little bit, the text is a lot easier to read. It's a little less jarring to have a neon thing pop out at you, and all that. Let's see if this one works. Okay, cool. So the difference between these two is this is where I'm talking about that inconsistent spacing. So when you look at the poster on the left, it's just a little bit more, it looks a little bit more professional than the one on the right, where you've got all these inconsistent lines. Things aren't the same size. You've also got these like weird negative spacings. So your brain will naturally notice those like kind of weird negative spacings, and you'll just kind of cling to it instead of focusing on the poster, I guess. So it looks a lot more professional if it's just consistent throughout and it doesn't have those weird, awkward negative spacings where it looks empty, versus this negative space doesn't look empty, it looks like it has a purpose, if that makes sense. So that one is not something that we want to do. We want to make sure that our spacing is really consistent. Oh, it did it again. All right. This one was just going to show this one is really important, so I'm going to go in and actually delete that one. So this one shows that importance of that visual hierarchy in terms of sizing. So what I actually did is these two things are now the same font size. These two things are the same font size. And you can tell that it's a little bit more difficult to kind of walk through the poster. You may be drawn to these headers because of the color, but it doesn't prove enough separation between the body text and the header. So you got to make sure that it has that visual hierarchy of, even though the colors are leading me to the right place, it kind of looks like it's on the same importance of a bunch of other things, and it doesn't quite work. So this is an example of that visual hierarchy that's not quite used exactly correct. But yeah, so those are the examples that I have, kind of just bad uses of the tips. I have all of the links and helpful tools that I use here. So these were the color palette websites, the font picking websites. Here's the link to the full poster, the Better Design poster. He talks about a lot of really interesting stuff. He has a lot of opinions on how poster presentation or conference presentations should be changed like that, which I think are a lot of really good things to pull into your own poster presentation, just to become a better communicator. The second one is, I talked a lot about obviously the poster design, but another really important part of that visual storytelling is your data visualization. So I was given this really awesome kind of website that'll walk you through the right ways to visualize your data, and are you using the right types of graph and stuff. So that's something that's really helpful, that will also help you be a better communicator in your poster presentation. One of the other things that I find help your poster make more professional is if you have an image with a white background on top of another background color. If you can remove that white background and the figure is still visible, it sometimes looks a little bit more professional and like it's supposed to be there, not just thrown in. So this website is really, really easy. You upload your image and it'll remove kind of that background, that white background, and create a transparent background for you to kind of help out if white wasn't one of your theme colors and you don't use white anywhere else, but then suddenly your figure background is white. Sometimes it looks a little off-putting. So if it's bothering you, you can go and remove it. If it makes your figure illegible, I would say absolutely leave the white background, but this is something to try if you want to get a little bit more creative. Ooh, and then the last one is kind of the handbook that I use when messing with Matplotlib settings to kind of make my figures match the thematic elements of my poster. He does, the maker of this handbook does a really good job of walking it through with examples, and helps you figure out how to do that. But yeah, as we're coming on the end of the hour, I just want to say thank you. Here's my email, but again, I'll also be available on Slack. And this poster or the presentation will be available, I believe, on both the website and Slack later. So thank you guys.
Thank you, Maddie. Yes, all the recording as well as these links will make available on the Slack workspace. So please join us there with any follow-up questions. And again, thank you so very much, Maddie. Okay, and with that, I'm going to go ahead and close the webinar.